Thank you, Honourable Chair. The answer to the question is as follows. An investigator was appointed to look at the possible complicity of officials, and any consequence management disciplinary action will emanate from the decision taken following the investigations. Regarding the video clip of a remand detainee, Boniface Carrera Banks, a Zimbabwean national, circulated on social media on the 14th of July 2024, the inmate was traced and found at Unit G6A, Room 4 at the Goodwood Correctional Centre. According to the investigation, the inmate had several videos recorded on his TikTok account, and further investigation indicates that these videos inside the cell and in the courtyard were recorded owing to poor supervision by officials. The inmate was charged, degraded, and immediately transferred to a maximum facility. The TikTok account was deactivated on 28th of July 2024, and the inmate forfeited his privileges, such as visits and buying from the offender shop, for a period of 3 months. The National Commissioner conducted a searching operation joined by the media on the 16th of July 24 with an objective of bringing to light the conditions of the centre and dispel the myth of a soft life behind bars at Goodwood Correctional Facility. A similar approach was to be observed by 2 other searching operations being in Johannesburg and Durban Correctional Centres. Removing contraband in order to ensure safe and secure custody is a priority for correctional services. Hence, working with the media is strategic in amplifying a DCS message whilst educating the public about the corrections as a societal responsibility. Mainstream media engagement is being cascaded to community media by means of securing slots. This is a platform that will ensure that the community is informed and engaged. By leveraging the power of community media, the department's message will find resonance with communities and be best positioned to drive public education. Inmates are currently remand detainees at Goodwood Correctional Centres. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I've been informed that the Honourable Mr. M.M. Sokopo will take charge of this question on behalf of the Honourable Ramabuleng.
Thank you, House Chair. May I take the question for Honourable Sokopo?
Please proceed.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you very much, Minister, for your response. And the steps taken against the inmate are noted and well received. We also share your concern about inmates who still possess contraband in a form of communication tools and are still communicating with the outside world. Can you please just indicate what is the department's plans to restrict unlawful communication by inmates in the centers? Thank you very much, Minister.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. There are various ways to deal with this matter of cell phones and connections from in our facilities to the outside world. Although it's not that simple. For instance, you can have a jammer, but some of our facilities is close to highways and the community itself, and you cannot restrict the jamming just to the centre as such, and that will have an influence on the community as well. So what we are doing, we're looking at technology. There are sophisticated technology to make it a more focused situation, but it is expensive, and we will have to look at our budget. Thank you.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable J. Engelbrecht.
Thank you, Minister. The actions against the inmate is clear. However, what specific failures in oversight or management allow such issues to occur, and what accountability measures are taken against those responsible for these lapses from within the department?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. As we said, it was quite clear that some of officials were part of this breach. And I can say that after the investigation, a total of 6 officials were identified for disciplinary actions to be instituted against them. An investigation was conducted and completed. The area commissioner of Goodwood took a decision on Sunday, the 25th of August, 2024, to institute the disciplinary process against the 6 officials. The status at the moment is all 6 members are formally charged. 2 out of the 6 are finalized, namely the head of the center and acting unit manager, and 4 are still in process. So consequence management is essential if you want to eradicate corruption in any department. And that, as I said, the officials are investigated, some concluded, and there will be disciplinary steps.
Yeah, interesting, guys. So Dr. Pieter Groenewald has decided to wage war on what he calls soft life and also blind eyes in South Africa's prison system, or what South Africans generally call the correctional services in South Africa. And for me, you know, one of the reasons why I really enjoy listening to the issues with prison and crime in South Africa is that it's really touching. I usually take them personal because many times I feel really embarrassed at how much people have descended and, you know, given up to, you know, in life to really low forms of existence, to crime, to other forms of existence that actually show human delinquency, so to speak. I think I was even watching one video this morning about a lady on YouTube. I think, you know, she had actually been stuck on meth, which is a drug, you know, and you could see that she couldn't even respond to the questions that were being posed to her. I think she works as a stripper in South Africa, and also the fact that, you know, probably the addiction anyway, or whatever it is, you know, has caused her to lose, according to her, I think with a 2 million rands or something. Many people claim it's maybe 20,000, but she claims that 2 million rands. She lost a divorce. I think she had a baby, but she's not able to. You know, she doesn't really know where this baby is at, or you know, I would really recommend that you guys watch that video. But for me, it was a really sad reality of the nuances of the times that actually go on right now, and that we're actually seeing in South Africa at the moment. You know, South Africa is really reading in crime, in drugs, drug problems. Yesterday, I was also watching another video. I think 2 videos anyway. Sylvester Mofokeng was back on Scheme's channel. If you've not watched that, you know, edition, I would really recommend. It's really powerful because it just paints a picture of the mess that drugs and crime actually, impacts on the life of its victims. The one other guy, I think he's now a pastor in South Africa. He used to be a gang, you know, leader. He spoke about how, you know, most of the drugs that are being sold to these people have different kinds of concussion, different kinds of rituals sprinkled on them before sold. So when it gets into the victims, it's really difficult to escape the addiction that these drugs cause. And so it's a really big problem. It goes beyond just the addiction to the drug per se, but it appears to even have a such of non-material influence on the life of the people in which it damages. And then the effect on society then becomes larger. And so that's why for me, I take this issue of drugs and crime in South Africa really personal, not because of the fact that I have capacities to try to, you know, increase a certain kind of like physical, you know, physical war, so to speak, if I use that colloquial language on that. But the fact that it ravages people's lives, it ravages young South Africans' lives, ravages people's intellect. When you listen to these victims and when they really get out of correctional services and then, you know, begin to reflect on their life after many years of damage, you can see that these guys are really sharp intellectual giants. They had prospects, they had, you know, possibilities to really influence society in positive ways. But, you know, because of the way they grew up, because of the lack of mentors, because of the lack of role models in society, especially when I listen to the likes of Sylvester Mofokeng and the likes of, I think his name is Ravi Quiano or so. I think his videos on Scheme's channel anyway, you should go check it out. Really powerful testimonies these guys have on how they've changed their life after many years, as much as 30 years, 40 years in jail. It's really unbelievable. And so that's why this speeches by Dr. Pieter Groenewald really touched me, and the case of crime and gang, you know, issues in South Africa really they're really touching to me, because it really shows how sensitive it is that one has a grip on his life or her life in this world. The world can be really violent. The world can really be what many would say unfair, so to speak. And so to see how the drug business and the drug cartels are really destroying lives in South Africa it's a really terrible scene to watch and really get to understand, you see. And so Dr. Pieter Groenewald now is actually exposing the fact that, even within the correctional services in South Africa seem to even be harboring on making these guys even harder. Okay, so when they're caught in the outside world, living violent lives, correctional services should be a place where they get corrected and probably find a place to show remorse, and after that being reintroduced into society. But in South Africa's prison system, for example, it appears to be a place where people are even much more hardened, so to speak, because of the different kinds of things they experience in prison. Many of them get raped. I remember the interview with Skim and Ravi, this former gang leader. He spoke about how many inmates, with the innocence, when they get into prison, when they're offered food and drinks and all by these gangs, so to speak, in prison, they end up giving themselves away, giving themselves to victims of all kinds of abuse within the prison. And also Sylvester Mofokeng also spoke about how different instances where he witnessed really violent attacks by gangs to different people right in his presence. And so it's a place that is so violent that to the point where when an inmate experiences these events, whether being an active participant or a victim or just an onlooker, coming out into society, in the normal world, so to speak, then becomes a heaven to replay those traumatic images and then decide, or so to speak, turn them into pseudo outmate, if I could use those words. So they're inmates in the prison, but outside they're outmates, and the wider world then becomes theater for them to probably likely implement most of the incidences they've experienced that have attached trauma to them, and then at the end of the day they find themselves back in prison. And so we see this cycle of crime and imprisonment constantly going on and on again. And Dr. Pieter Groenewald is actually trying to break through that divide by trying to make sure that correctional services becomes a service, okay, and not just a prison where you just keep people, but it's a service rendered to the people of South Africa, where it's a service that corrects criminals, so to speak, and help them develop the kind of mindset and worldview and life views into the world to be able to reintroduce as safe citizens back into society. And so two problems is actually outlined that these officers in the prison usually have blind eyes. These are the concepts and the metaphors he uses in the systems of the prisons in South Africa, that many of the officers have blind eyes and they turn a blind eye to many things that go on in the prison. And so that's why these perpetrators of violence within the prisons themselves actually then continue to do so. And I think Sylvester Mofokeng, in his interview with Skim, if you go and watch the part 2 of his interview, he spoke about how many officers as well usually become those portals through which some contraband items get smuggled into prison. And so it then sort of like becomes a business, so to speak. Dr. Groenewald actually also speaks about that, he as a correctional services minister, he would be engaging in a crackdown on some officers that have actually turned this whole correctional service industry into some kind of business, so to speak. Although he praises South Africa's police, that many of them are dedicated, many of them are committed to their tasks, but then there's just a few crop that actually then allow this corruption continue to go on within the prisons, and that's actually his target. But there was I saw this interview on Cape Talk with Dr. Pieter Groenewald, where this inmate, I think it's a caller by an caller who is an inmate, actually explains, some problems that actually go on within the prison systems, and actually implicating the fact that some officers have turned some of the smuggling in the prisons into businesses, and I thought it was really interesting that let's just listen to this call on Cape Talk, and I'll be back to just round up some of my thoughts on Dr. Pieter Groenewald's impact in the correctional services.
Mr. Minister, as I said, we have inmates who listen to us, and we actually received a voice note earlier, obviously sent by an electronic device. Have a listen.
I'm also an inmate listening to your show every morning from 4 o'clock onwards, and thank you guys for the good content. About that idiot who posted that thing on TikTok. Yeah, a lot of us guys here, we've got phones, but we actually use it just to communicate with our families. A lot of us, we only got family overseas, so it's difficult. And 90% or maybe 100% of the time, the public phones here never worked in years. So that's our only way. In fact, if you need something from outside or whatever, even the officials will tell you, then call your people. If you say you don't have a phone, they just tell you, go to your section, somebody will give you a phone. A lot of them do turn a blind eye, and a lot of them sadly makes a business out of it. They search the sections, they demand bribes, and it's like a business model here in prison. But for the most part, we try to make only good use of it and not mock the victims of our crimes. We try to better ourselves.
I think that's a very sober message there from that listener who is in an unidentified, or we're not disclosing which facility he is in. But he says often communication is a problem. If the South Africa is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners, it's quite notably called the Mandela Rules on the Rights of Prison, saying that communication is an issue, and many times inmates are forced to smuggle in and use communication devices, Minister.
Yes, as you said, we have the Nelson Mandela rules, United Nations and everything. And some of those rules are depending on what category of prisoner you are. There are certain privileges for some and other not. But it is true that, as this person has said, some are actually operating a business from within our prisons. And yes, it is that some wardens just turn a blind eye. But I say again, I will see to it, and I see it as part of my priority, to ensure that there are no more blind eyes in prisons, and that we will have to deal with this matter. If you just say to yourself, it's a problem that we will not be able to solve, it's just going to escalate, and that is also not fair to certain other prisoners who, because of good behavior, are also now punished further because of certain new rules or anything like that.
Dr. Pieter Groenewald, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, so you heard it, guys. So I think it's he's actually speaking from one of the wards, one of the prisons in South Africa, speaking about what goes on inside the prisons, and it speaks to the fact that correctional services is a really intense job in South Africa. You see, and when I listen to Dr. Pieter Groenewald, I hear a man who is really passionate about this task, and it's a kind of job that can easily get one demotivated and depressed if you're not careful, if you're not mentally strong and stable. But I think that probably we might continue to expect really firm grasp and a firm tradition, a firm culture among correctional services staff, as long as the budget actually also allows them to function, because I know Dr. Pieter Groenewald has complained that the budget cuts in the correctional services appears to be one of those factors that then endanger the lives, especially financial security of the officers, who then turn to business direction, so to speak, within the prisons to try to sustain their lives and their families. So there are many-sided loopholes in the whole correctional services industry that actually need to be tackled if and strategically in that regard if correctional services under Dr. Pieter Groenewald must succeed. But I don't know, what do you guys think about Dr. Groenewald here in his speech? He's answering different questions in the parliament here where he's really being asked strategic questions on how far correctional services has been going since the inauguration after the May 29th election. So share your thoughts. What do you think about the speech here and the analysis here? Share your thoughts. Let's hear from you. What do you think about correctional services in South Africa? Share your thoughts in the comments.